African agriculture has for long been dependent on manual labor and very little or no mechanization. However, with the digital migration, experts believe Africa is poised to become a global smart agriculture powerhouse if only people adapted to new technologies and innovated a new smart ways of farming. The earth has undergone various industrial revolutions. The first industrial revolution in the 18th century focused on textile manufacture and steam power. The second introduced electric power. The third, electronics and information technology to automate production. And now, the fourth industrial revolution is here. The new era, an era of the Internet of Things, robotics, artificial intelligence, geodata, and blockchain technology. Africa too is engaging in this new industrial revolution by transforming agriculture with technology. The beautiful continent is blessed with 60% of the world's arable land. Africa has a youthful population under 25 years. Africa's population is 4 billion and is expected to double in 2030, giving the continent bigger manpower. However, this manpower will need food too. Presently, despite the fact that the continent still has the world's most arable land, Africa is importing a lot of food to feed her population, spending over $40 billion annually on food exports.
For agriculture to transform an economy, you need to do it differently. Currently, we have smallholder farming on very small pieces of land using rudimentary equipment, and this cannot transform the sector to propel the economy forward. If you look at the trends since the 1960s, you find that the agriculture sector was contributing about 52% to GDP. But currently, the contribution of the agriculture sector to GDP is 23.3% to GDP, and it means that while 72% of the population are engaged in this sector, the contribution has been declining from 1960s. What's the economic implication?
Dr. Amani Zaid lists points that must be put into consideration for Africa to harness its full potential in smart agriculture.
Because there are only two ways where you can move. Either you do that in person or you do this virtually. And we want to make sure that everyone is capable of doing that and doing it in a way that is reliable and doing it in a way that is affordable and also secure. So it's not just about affordability, but also security. The African single digital market is one of our the African Union, one of our flagship projects to ensure that it's one market.
Dr. Abu Zaid also points out that various African countries have already started on this journey.
We now understand that digital transformation is a must and should be accelerated as fast as we can. We are working on the infrastructure bit. We're working on the people, ensuring that, there are the skills that is there, to access and benefit from technology, but also the content, that whatever content is being produced and developed is one that is relevant to us in Africa, it's relevant to our communities, and that there is content also in local languages, so as to allow everyone in the continent to make this technology relevant to us and speaking to us.
Goal 5 of the Agenda 2063 calls for modern agriculture for increased productivity and production. According to the second Continental Report on the implementation of the agenda, Africa has registered performance score of 50% on the goal of modernizing the agriculture sector to boost agriculture production and productivity. The sector plays a significant role in most of Africa's economy, employing about 65% of the continent's active population. A number of African countries are making progress in boosting their agriculture productivity, as Albert Muchanga, the Commissioner for Economic Development, explains.
The future of Africa is based on a deeper economic integration. When our leaders formed the Organization of African Unity in May 1963, some of them called for the establishment of an African common market. And that idea did not die. We started by coming up with regional economic communities across Africa. And right now, there are 8 regional economic communities officially recognized by the African Union. I've requested my secretary to give you a copy of my article on this, so I don't need to go through these 8 regional economic communities. And with a view to implementing the treaty establishing the African Economic Community, my colleagues will be able to give you a copy of that.
In Uganda, agriculture is the backbone of the country's economy, contributing 25% of GDP, employing 72% of the total population, and ensuring 89% of people are food secure.
The sector that should have been economically democratic to transform the economy should have been that one which is employing the largest proportion of the population, and unfortunately it's not doing so. So what is the paradox? The paradox is that the sector which should be contributing the greatest proportion to GDP is not the one. Why? Because it is smallholder and with low productivity. There is even no labor productivity. The real production function, if we sit in agriculture sector, is very small. The equipment is very rudimentary. The markets for agricultural products are always oscillating. And so, if you want this sector to be on the forefront, and it potentially it is because of the demand for organic foods, is that you need to increase value to the sector. You have value addition. You turn the sector into industry. So that we have agriculture primary production. You go to now secondary. This is agro-processing and industry based on agriculture, and this is when you can.
Ethiopia is a low-income country with a population of almost 115 million people, 78.3% of whom live in rural areas. Most people depend on agriculture for livelihood. There are 12 million smallholder farming households, accounting for 95% of agricultural production and 85% of total employment in 2020. Agriculture contributed 35.5% of the country's GDP. The total GDP of the country is almost 108 billion US dollars, according to the World Bank report 2020. Agriculture is the backbone of the economy and the largest export earner, with coffee being the main export. A number of initiatives have been undertaken by the government to expand digital services to rural farming communities. And now the country is now considered one of the fastest growing economies. Nigeria currently has 66 million smallholder households with 30 million hectares under cultivation. Although 80% of its land is arable, only 40% of it is cultivated. Rwanda, the only African country to commit to the Comprehensive Agricultural Development Program, CAADP, is one of the African countries that have embraced digital farming.
Around 2000, we had some small GIS basic application, and later on, we had some remote sensing curricula and applied to real life in public and non-public institutions. And 10 years back, we were still on Landsat, spot imagery, very hard to get with poor internet. But nowadays, we have very strong Earth observation applications with a very interesting resolution of available data set from space-borne and land-borne, where we have also already UAV to solve real-life problems throughout research and the recommended application and community outreach in the context of teaching. And for some decision makers, for some researchers, it's still like a myth which should be demystified and used, especially in the context of Rwanda, where we have land scarcity and very dynamic and very changing land uses and land which need smart land planning. So I found the DA, the Digital Earth Observation, among others, African tailored, and why not in the near future regional or country tailored can be used for solving real life problems in terms of sustainable resources use, which is a big issue in our context of soil conservation, climate change impact, public health.
In West Africa, Cameroon has 4G services available in some parts of the country with 53.4 coverage, thus making strides in establishing supportive infrastructure towards a digital economy for farmers.
That we are also trying to apply here in Cameroon. So we have some applications, mobile applications that we use, and they help us very much in agriculture, and it's technology that we are trying to apply. Here I'm using a Technocova smartphone powered by Android. I will be demonstrating to you now how I am using Leaf Snap to identify different varieties of plants and their family and other elements concerning the plant. So let's go. So on my phone, this is Leaf Snap. This is the app. When I touch Leaf Snap and there is a plant that I want to identify, it calls my camera from the back end. Then if I take my camera now and then I go to the leaf that I want to snap, for example this one, then I confirm, it is going to use the internet to search the plant, and then it tells us exactly the type of plant we are using.
Now I will showcase and explain how the machine is operating automatically. The machine turns eggs automatically by an egg turning motor every after 90 minutes. The machine capacity is for 360 eggs. You put the egg trays and place them in the incubation setting trays. Plug incubator into the socket. Temperature and humidity controller will control all the things automatically.
We place the seedlings in what we call healing chamber. Healing chamber or humidity chamber is where we place the seedlings after cutting them. Here, what is important, we place the seeds or the seedlings in the chamber, whereby the temperatures, we keep regulating the temperatures. They should be between 25 to 35. Like currently you can see it's quite really hot. The temperature is 30 degrees Celsius. That helps to keep the seedlings to be warm to avoid rotting.
Actually, 85% of the continent is covered by 2G or 3G. It's through mobile means, which is not as fast as broadband, but it is coming. But only 40% of the continent, or a little less, uses internet, which means that there is also not only the coverage gap, which is not very big, but again, we are aiming to have it at 100%. As I said, the coverage is almost 85%, but there is also a usage gap. 60% of those who are covered are unable to use the internet because they lack the skills, they lack the knowledge of how to do it, or the interest because there isn't a service that is.
Despite all the innovations and readiness to embrace technology, is the climate change dilemma. Farmers like Alex, who are most at risk of essential losses to the effects of climate change, have adopted to resilient agriculture.
Sometimes when the temperature regenerates, when the temperatures become high, you find our fish suffocating. You find when they're out at the top gasping. So the only way to help them is to open our inlet here, our outlet here, as you have seen, so that the water which is hot can go outside, and we are letting in the fresh water that brings in the dissolved oxygen. That is the reason as why when we are installed. As you know, we have got the problem of climate change, and most of farmers, they are struck by drought. But for us, we who are doing integrated fish farming, we make sure that even though the drought comes in, we keep on moving. This is how we survive. Like for example, it is rocky. It is rocky and it has been shining heavy. But due to the fact that we have got our ponds down there, if the sunshine becomes too much, we pump water to support to support our banana plantation. Then another thing, we also own cows, poultry, hens, and whatever. They give us manure, of which we apply in our malam like this one.
So using satellite data products provided by global data providers, we are able to process this climate data and generate advisories to last mile farmers. In this, we want to alert farmers of an upcoming growing season, or the sowing window, or the spraying window, and we generate this from global climate data sets. However, we have a challenge that this has not been embraced by the technical institutions, the government workers, and at policy level. Most of the government institutions are not embracing advanced technology, the upcoming technology. Use of satellite data to advise farmers has not really been embraced at national level, and we need to do this. We need to promote the use of satellite data for early warning in the agriculture sector.
Climate change has also led to changes in precipitation patterns in Sudan, with some areas experiencing more frequent and intense rainfall events, while others are experiencing severe droughts. These changes in precipitation has made it more difficult for farmers to plan their irrigation schedules and have increased the risk of crop failure. Another effect of climate change is increased frequency and intensity of extreme weather events.
The Association of Strengthening Agriculture Research in Eastern and Southern Africa, together with the Australian government and Digital Earth Africa, provides access to data observation to allow generation of statistics using Earth observation tools. These experts aim to support the governments to make data-driven decisions.
With these workshops that we hold in collaboration with Azureka, we're hoping that we can reach as many stakeholders as possible and different people in different sectors who can then disseminate our platforms, our data, our services, down to the people who actually need it, that can make the decisions that are required for food security and agricultural production in the continent. So we are hoping that by holding these sessions, people will know about the DE Africa platform, the data sets that we provide, and actually use them to actually make a difference in agriculture and food security.
The past 2.5 years forced us to be in the digital space, and we didn't have a choice but to be there. So if you're a farmer or you're in a space where you haven't yet embraced it, now would be a good time to do it, because the future is definitely going to be digital and you don't want to be left behind.
This program is already being observed in Burundi, Congo, Ethiopia, Kenya, Madagascar, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Eritrea, and Sudan. The African Union is strengthening all African countries by enabling integration and thus unity on the continent. However, the Union can only advocate, and it is up to the government to implement. With the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want lies Africa's master plan.
The African single digital market is one of our the African Union, one of our flagship projects to ensure that it's one market where we exchange, communicate, interact in a free and secure way, and that whatever we're going to say is recognizable on the other side, especially if we're doing transactions. Transact also because this is very much linked to the African Free Trade Area.
There has been significant improvement in the implementation of the Agenda 2063 in the last decade, with AU member states taking on big infrastructure projects that, she says, will drive Africa's agriculture into the fourth industrial revolution.
And I think it's an opportunity for Africa to be feeding the world. Fortunately for us, we have the tropical climate, which in many instances cannot be replicated elsewhere. So we have that opportunity. Secondly, of course, we grow most of our foods organically, and the world is moving away from pesticides. Thirdly, we have original food. We still enjoy food that is not tampered with. So I think that gives us a lot of opportunity. And I think what Africa needs to do, first of all, we need to work together as the African Union to make sure that we can even aggregate what it is that we are trying to grow and export abroad. Secondly, we need to build our infrastructure, because if we are going to be a powerhouse for agriculture, we need to have infrastructure which enables us to actually grow food and export it or process it around the African continent. Fourthly, of course, we need to start growing commercially, because most of our agriculture producers or agri-producers are smallholder farmers. So I think we need to be able to say, how do we actually pool our land resources together so that we can utilize technology and be able to grow commercially. So I think that is the only way we are going to meet the quantities of food that are required to feed the world.
The ongoing projects in Africa include the $4.53 billion hydropower project in Angola, the Addis Ababa Bole International Airport in Ethiopia, Moy Kloof Mega Residential Project in South Africa, the Konza Technology City in Kenya, among others. The African Continental Free Trade Area is also key to the transition to smart agriculture. The ACFTA has a market of 1.2 billion consumers, which will reach 1.7 billion by 2030.
We're also investing in manufacturing and agro-processing. We have what we call the regional and continental value chains, and we have identified the 5 priority areas: the automobile, the bird food, textiles, and pharmaceuticals, among others. Altogether, we are mapping regional and continental value chains across Africa. Work continues, but we have started on those key ones. And we have also teamed up with our colleagues in dealing with agriculture, the other African Union Commission, to develop agro-parks across Africa, encompassing 2 or more countries. And a maiden venture is the AgroPax program between Zambia and Zimbabwe, so that Africa becomes self-sufficient in food in the near future. So this is where we are on economic integration. The road continues. After the customs union, we are going to have a common market and eventually the African Economic Community.
According to Joseph Asako, Commissioner for Rural Economy and Agriculture, from conventional power sources can grow Africa's economy by 6.4 billion by 2050.
We are 4 years to the 10 years action plan of the African Union for Agenda 2063, and these 10 years, countries are still having issues of hungers. Build resilience for community because of climate hazard, and build resilience on food production.
Innovations and investment, the continent's agriculture could be transformed into a powerhouse, not only to feed a growing population, but to create decent employment for millions of young people.
Some of the major innovations I've been able to work on, and others that I've seen, we've worked on smart irrigation systems, mainly using sensors and alternative sources of power. So those are the major ones, and we are also having smaller implements, farm implements, so that we can have those less costs, so that farmers are able to really get on board. And then when it comes to the better technologies we'd love to have, we'd want to bring in things to do with precision agriculture. That's why you can see imagery, so that farmers don't waste their inputs like fertilizers and all those other things. So if we can have more of those smart systems and precision agriculture systems, it would be of a great help, because we don't waste. We use everything efficiently, including, most especially, water in irrigation.
As long as we learn from lessons, do it right, manage risks, and take into account data sovereignty, inclusivity, sustainability, we will all benefit. We all need to own our continent. Let us transform Africa into a smart Africa.